I'm joined by Bruno Giussani, the European Director and International Curator of TED. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, hi.
Now, look, we're here tonight for the BMW Next Visionaries event. Is this the first time a car manufacturer has utilised TED in this way?
In this way, yes. We've had partnership with other car manufacturers in the past, but mostly went around what TED does usually, which is putting up conferences. And this is the first time we have a project where we literally go out and try to find ideas from anywhere and from anywhere. We opened up this big competition through the web. About 200 submissions came in, and they could come from anyone. We're not really looking for specific profiles of people. We're looking for specific strengths and insights in the ideas. And that's how we ended up selecting the 6 that are here today.
So it's simply an online process, basically. Anyone can apply. You don't just handpick people.
No, anyone can apply. It's not so obvious though for a car manufacturer to open up that kind of conversation, right? We tend to be very protective of our processes, and then ideas come from our designers and our creatives and these kind of things. And opening up to the world is not so obvious. So yes, it's essentially an online competition, but it takes courage to open up that way.
Of course, yeah. Now TED's been around since 1984, I think.
Yes, 1984,
first started.
Exactly.
There's any number of innovation-style conferences out there. What makes TED different to the rest?
It's an interesting question. First of all, we need to qualify the 1984 because TED did start in 1984 as an annual conference. And it went as an annual conference until 2005. Literally, there were 1,000 people meeting once a year in Monterey, California for 3 or 4 days, and they were discussing topics on an eclectic range of things. So, of course, TED comes from technology, entertainment, and design, but we broke through that a long time ago, adding science and architecture and business and philanthropy and education and politics and everything else. So it's really a 360 degrees attempt of finding and discussing the new and the relevant. And then in 2005, we started breaking out of that single annual conference and adding more pieces to that with the intention of creating around it a sort of global platform for identifying and disseminating great ideas. And great ideas are not just the light bulb that lights up in your head. They are pieces of research, insightful experiences, all these kind of things. And we added many pieces over the years. We started by adding a second conference, TED Global, and then we added an annual prize to highlight one specific idea and help it happen. And then we added, of course, our online presence. In 2006, we started releasing videos online, and that kind of prompted literally an exponential acceleration of the expansion of TED.
It's at what, 50 million views so far?
We're actually running right now, I think, at a rate of something like 3 billion views a year,
that's great.
Maybe even more than that. I don't have exact numbers for the last few months, but certainly a rate of like that. And so the online presence, the videos propelled us pretty far. And then we added many other pieces. We've added a piece, for example, where we allow local teams to organize local events under the TEDx brand, TEDx plus the name of the city, TEDx Sydney, for example. And we have 3,600 events a year under their brand, which a huge community of volunteers, tens of thousands of volunteers around the world, organized under the TED brand. We have a fellows program, we have a residency program, we have a huge presence on all social media channels. We publish a book collection, we have podcasts, a radio program, which is very popular in the US and in the English-speaking parts of Africa, for example. And so all that, it seems kind of very diverse and eclectic and a bit confused, but somehow it all builds together into this idea of this is a platform that uses online and offline, broadcast and digital, to disseminate great thinking, great ideas. It's kind of an educational kind of approach, right?
Well, it's a platform that was appreciated by the Pope. Pope Francis, you organised for him to talk on TED.
To give a TED Talk last April, yes, absolutely.
That's incredible. And my understanding is that you actually provided the English dubbing for that tape.
Yeah, oh my God.
With the Italian accent.
That's interesting.
So, what a challenge.
So what happened there is that we approached Pope Francis and his team to give a TED Talk. The Pope doesn't travel outside of Italy except for the official trips when he celebrates a 1 million people mass like he just did in Colombia, and meets the government and meets the whole Catholic hierarchy in that country, and etc. It's not imaginable the Pope would actually travel to our conference, give a talk, and go away, right? It would be a huge offense to every Catholic in the country, etc., etc. So what we did is that we organized for the Pope to give a talk, to record a talk at Vatican City, and he gave the talk in Italian, which meant that we had to subtitle it for the presentation at the conference that happened at our main conference in Vancouver last April. So people in the theater would have seen the video with the Pope speaking Italian subtitles. But we do have a version of all the talks that's audio only. And that goes out as a podcast, goes out on Audible, goes out on Amazon's Alexa and in iTunes, etc. And normally our talks are in English, so you just strip away the video and then edit those tiny bits where the speaker says, well, look at this image, or this kind of things, right? Here, the talk is in Italian, so stripping the video was not sufficient, and the team came and said, okay, what do? We need to dub it. We want someone with an Italian accent. Clearly, as you can hear, they got a lot of Italian accent, and so I dubbed the whole thing just the day before we released the video, and we went up on video and audio at the same time.
Quite an honour. Now, look, there's a lot of talk about innovation these days. That's what you're all about. Everyone has an idea, and especially in the automotive world. If you had to pinpoint just a couple of viable, realistic ideas that you've heard come across recently, give me a couple.
Well, first of all, there is a lot of. First of all, I think there is a misguided or an unbalanced view of innovation. We tend to think that most of innovation today comes from the digital technology space, and there is a lot going on there, starting with artificial intelligence, etc. But if we leave that aside, because that kind of literally attracts most of the attention, and we look at other spaces where there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of innovation, of course, in mobility and automotive. There's a lot of innovation in biology, in nanotech, etc. And there is a lot of innovation that has nothing to do with products. It has to do with processes, with ways of doing things, with the frameworks that we use to think about problems. Think, for example, of the huge scale of urban renewal that we have witnessed in the last decade. In big cities like New York and in smaller cities around the world. That's not about thinking innovation in terms of, I've developed a new material and here is the 3D printer that can use it and suddenly we have a product. It's actually about, how do flows of people function in these cities? How can we change them? How can we make the city more livable? And that's also innovation. We tend to forget that there is that aspect of innovation because so much attention is attracted by the latest app or the latest smartphone. But we need to be mindful of that too.
All right, just a couple of questions. We're here tonight, obviously, for the BMW i Next Visionary event. For the 6 speakers, there's some pretty wild ideas out there. Solar flying pods, space travel, global tunnels for transportation. What's the best advice, though, you can give for a successful speaker at an event like this?
I think that out there visions are not necessarily something off limits or bad. But I tend to shy away from things that are visibly unrealistic. Even if you project yourself 20 years off or 30 years in front of us, somehow you need to have a realistic and credible path to get there. And sometimes that means breaking things and changing things in a radical way. But if there isn't that path, I kind of be reluctant to put the speaker on stage. I want some realistic path. I want some solidity on the facts. No quackery. We want science and facts, and somehow the capacity or the possibility for the audience to kind of plug into that vision and follow that vision, right? And of course, you can imagine fantasy things, and that's a nice narrative for a Hollywood movie or for a comic, but not for a TED Talk.
You need to be more than just a dreamer, basically. Look, before we finish, let's just quickly concentrate on you. You've got quite an illustrious bio. You're a renowned author. You've been named as one of the 100 most influential Europeans via the Wired UK publication. You've been named the Swiss Award Person of the Year in 2015. I'm just scratching the surface. From an early age, what really drove you to where you are today? How did this all start?
Really curiosity. It's just the curiosity about how the world works and how people interact and what we can dream up to make our future better. And sometimes we dream up things that don't make our future better, actually rather the opposite. Right now we seem to be in a moment where we're struggling to unite at least around some positive vision, but I think there is still a lot of latent potential there, let's call it like that, to move together in a better direction.
Okay, Bruno, thanks for your time.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Appreciate that.